What's going on, Burke?
Hey guys, how are you?
We're fantastic. Just mulling over the trade deadline, about 8 days away. Why don't we start with that conversation and Ryan Reeves? What do you think happens over the next week with him?
Well, I think you either have that element in your lineup or you don't. And I think using dressing a heavyweight only when another heavyweight is dressed is what teams have done. Kind of what Rosie said. I used to have one dressed every night because I thought it was important for my team. I think your team is bigger and stronger and better and braver, all those things when you dress a heavyweight. But they've become an anachronism on some teams, and some teams don't dress them, and so you're wasting a body in their minds. I don't think so, but I think Revo's a good guy. He's a quality person. He gets this. Being out for a month is probably hard, but he gets this. He'll get back in there at some point.
Mm-hmm. Burke, thanks for sitting down with us. Appreciate it. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, as a proud American, a guy that's been around the block and worn a lot of different hats and is a pretty perceptive person. Did you see the Four Nations? Not to go back to it, but I have to ask you: did you foresee that tournament becoming what it became?
No, I think anyone who says they foresaw this is lying. It's easy to take credit for it now and say, I always knew it would be a great success. I thought it would be popular, but I never estimated the impact this tournament would have. And the NHL did a great job staging it, putting it on, conceiving of it, and then putting it together. So it was amazing. I thought it was great hockey, great drama, great ratings. You can't beat it.
Oh, we just crave for that level of hockey for like a decade. I can't wait already for Milan next year in Italy. But I see you at the games quite a bit at Scotiabank Arena. As mentioned, 8 days away from the trade deadline. First and foremost, like, what do you make of this Maple Leafs team right now?
Well, I like their team. I mean, they made it more interesting than they needed to on Tuesday, but I like their team. I think they've got a good team. They're top heavy. They can score. I think they're probably, depending on how bad Chris Tanev's injury is, they're probably one defenseman away from what they'd like as a lineup. I like the goaltending when they're healthy. I'd be concerned a little bit about the fact that both goaltenders have been hurt. But if they're healthy, they don't have many holes in that lineup. They got a lot of firepower. The coach is excellent. They got goaltending. They got a lot of problem is, I watched Winnipeg play last night. And then you say, who's going to beat Winnipeg? The answer is right now, nobody.
They're looking pretty good, aren't they? Well, as we approach the trade deadline, you've been a general manager before. I'm always curious, when does that phone start heating up? Is it already started? Is there different people playing coy and with this strategy and that strategy? What's it like for a general manager? We're a week out from the trade deadline.
Well, first off, it's going to change dramatically between now and the next 8 days. Because it's someone's going to get hurt. Someone gets hurt every night, and someone who thinks they're in a real good position, their goaltending is solid, is going to go out and get a goaltender because someone gets hurt. So it's going to change rapidly. Some teams have already started shopping. I always try to do my stuff early. I felt that I used the old Kmart. You guys I'm showing my age here, but you probably don't even remember Kmart. But Kmart used to have a blue light special, and blue light would go on, and they'd have a special on that item. So special on raincoats, and everyone would go to this blue light would be flashing, and everyone would jam their carts in and try and empty out the aisle. So that's what it liked for me, trade deadline. I always try to get my work done early because I think you get too crowded. It gets too confusing at the deadline. And the prices go up, not down.
It's interesting too, like you add the wrinkle of the deadline, quote unquote, prior to the Four Nations, but even like the Mikko Rantanen conversation is a polarizing one. How have you viewed how Carolina's handled that? And do you think the Leafs would be a legitimate team potentially involved if they flip him again?
Well, I don't know what kind of price tag they're going to get if he's not signed. I assume, like most people did, that before they made this deal, they'd had discussions about a new contract for Mikko Rantanen. If they paid that price tag and then he walks, like they did with Jake Gensel, that's going to be a horrible mistake in my mind. But I assumed, and everyone did, I think, around me, that they had some discussions about parameters for a new deal. And that hasn't happened. And when you haven't had discussions, you've handed the hammer to the team that just acquired you. So if you're Rantanen and you come to Carolina and there's been no discussion, price tag just went up again, boys. So I think it's a dangerous game that they're playing, and if he walks, they won't get the same return.
Scary thought. Scary thought. I do remember Kmart, Berkey, and if you're ever wagering with buddies and whatnot, I remember guys would say, "Oh, I'll blue light special you." It means you cut them a break on what they owe you. I never understood where that came from until I read your book and realized, well, that's from Kmart, the blue light special. So that helped me put 2 and 2 together. But speaking of blue light specials, I don't think a lot of them get passed out this time of year at the trade deadline. What do you think the Maple Leafs are looking for? There's a lot of talk about a right-handed defenseman and a lot of talk about a depth center.
Well, I think those are things they would add if they could. I think everyone's looking for depth. Everyone's looking for a depth center. Even if you're in first place, even if you're Winnipeg, you still have a shopping list. It's a shorter list when you're in first place, and it's the price tags are different because you're just looking for depth if someone gets banged up. So we brought in the only deal I made the year we won the Cup. I brought in brought in Brad May late, well before the deadline, but late in the year, just to add depth and character, and just in case we got banged up. He was a really important part of our Cup team, but we didn't do much because we had a really good team. We knew we were close, but it turns out, you guys know this. We ended up playing without our number one goaltender for first 2 series here. We won the Cup. Thank God Ilya Bryzgalov saved the season for us, but Jiggy's son was born with one eye missing. His son Max, so we had to play first 2 series without Chiguera. Thank God, like I say, Briz filled in, but so I think the answer is the list is different if you're in first place. It's shorter, it's price tags are less. You're not going to trade first round picks, but you got to remember, I always say this: teams at the deadline are in 4 categories for me. One is teams who are going for it. They're going to pay really high prices and try. And that's an admirable thing. When you get close, you owe it to your team to try to go for it. But then there's another group of 3 groups of teams. One group that's just trying to get into the playoffs, and they're going to pay a price just to try to get in, buy some insurance to get in. That's one group. And the second group is the group that's, okay, we've been eliminated 4 years in a row in the first round. Now we want to get enough firepower to win a round. That's a different price tag for those guys. Third group is you're not going to win. You're not going to pay the ultimate price, but you're going to pay a high price to try and win a second round or get to a third round. So there's different categories you're in. You've got to know where your team is on that spectrum.
It's all about fit too. Like Rosie and I, and obviously Rosie has the attachment to the Schenn brothers. They've been spoken about quite a bit in the market right now. Is there anybody out there right now, Berkey, in your opinion, that just makes too much sense for the Maple Leafs?
I can't see both Schenns going. I think that'd be a real high price tag. Both those guys are good players, and I think it'd be a real high price tag to get them both. That would be quite a coup if someone could get brothers. I've seen it done. It's kind of cool.
I think you know a little something about that in Vancouver days.
Yeah, but both those guys would add, but I think that would be very difficult to do.
What hypothetically, if they were to get one of them, it's funny because obviously you're pretty familiar with Luke Schenn and Braden. I think would be a great fit in Toronto. Hypothetically, for this team, who do you think would benefit if they could only get one of those guys?
Well, I think they'd benefit from either one. That's a crappy answer. I know you're asking to pick one or the other, but it's I think they both help.
Yeah,
very different players, obviously, but they both provide grit. They're both quality people that would add to the room right away. So I think they'd both add. Either one of them would add. I think they're both going to go too.
Ooh, Berkey, this time of year, I think it's so fascinating. Part of the reason why I wanted to get you on is you've worn these hats in the league. A lot of these trades, like how far in advance are they made, or are they put together really, really quickly? Can you take us behind the scenes of how things are put together?
Well, it depends on the GM. Some GMs are very impulsive and willing to do things quickly. Some GMs are very methodical and work at it. I'd say I was somewhere in between. I try to be methodical because I think you make the best decisions when you do it slowly. But I was telling the story the other day. We had when we did the Pronger deal, the trade with Edmonton for Chris Pronger. Scott Housen was the assistant GM of the Oilers that year. We were at the draft. He came and put an envelope on our table with a proposal on it. He gave them to 4 teams. It was us, I think Detroit. I'm not sure who the other 2 teams were. I should ask Kevin Lowe or Scott Housen which 4 teams they were. But they handed us an envelope that said, first team to do this will do it. and it was Laddie Smead, Joffrey Lupul, and a first for Chris Pryor. We said right on the table. As soon as I looked, I handed it to Bob Murray. I said, "Yeah, we'll do that." So we went right over to him. That trade was made in 12 seconds.
Nice.
Now, it was held up because we had a tagging room issue, a salary cap issue. So we ended up not doing it until after the first. But we committed to the deal that day in seconds. The deal with the Sedins, when Rick Dudley traded me, I traded 2 picks for the Twins on the floor to get the first pick overall. That trade, Rick Dudley came to my desk in my office and said, "Okay, we'll do the deal, but it need to be 2 seconds." I said, "No, it'll be 2/3 or whatever it was." Made the deal in seconds, but we had worked on that deal for days and days and days. So sometimes it's a quick result that brings to a culmination a lot of work and effort, preparation. Sometimes it's bang, bang.
I always think it'd be interesting to have like a 24/7 or an E60 or something on the general managers. I think it'd be impossible to do with the conversations that are had. But when you're dealing with that, and you got one deal that can happen quick and one that takes some methodical play towards it. Does ego come into play sometimes, where a guy's pissing you off or certain guys rubbing you the wrong way, and if it doesn't come to fruition really quickly, do you start to get the the guys button heads, so to speak?
Well, I used to write, in my mind, there's 30 teams. So I know it's 32. Anyone can say, "Hey, he doesn't even know how many teams there are." But out of the 30 teams, there's 3 groups of teams. There's 10 you cannot make a deal with. There's 10 teams, 10 GMs that you try and you cannot make deals with. So you end up not calling them as often. You're not going to waste time on guys like Darcy Reguera and I could never make a deal. We finally made one. Good guy, good friend. I really like Darcy, but he was speaking French and I was speaking Italian. So we couldn't even converse. So we talk about players. We were so far apart on values, the values for the players, so we couldn't make a deal. So you find out right away the guys that are wasting time, you still call them because you have to. Then there's 10 more guys that you think I can make a deal with and you stay on them. But there's 10 guys there that like to make deals. Like Paul Holmgren was a joy to deal with because he'd come into you and say, same thing I would do. I would call up, "It's okay, Rosie. Here's the 10 guys on my team I would move. Here's my positional needs. I need a left winger. I need a left shot D. Here's the guys I would move. Here's the draft picks I would move. Lay it all out and see if there's a fit. If there's not a fit, you move on. But sometimes there's a fit, like James Van Riemsdyk for Luke Schenn. That was the deal I made with Paul Holmgren. He agreed to that deal in seconds because he's that kind of guy. He's very, very prepared. Did all the work in advance, but could move quickly.
Okay.
Do you have any good deadline stories from your time with the Leafs?
We were hopelessly out of the playoffs a lot of those years.
Yeah.
No, I can't remember too many. You can't ask me that question, Rose. You got to tell me that before
I
get there.
Does it get your juices flowing thinking about the deadline though, and what that used to do to you? Do you envy the guys that are going through it right now, or is it something that's just too intense? What's your thoughts on it in general?
Well, if it's too intense, you should be doing something else. I mean, it's an active time of year. It's fun in the sense that it's the busiest time of the year for a lot of people, and the phones are ringing, and that part gives you some juice out of it, right? That's fun. But I think more mistakes were made at the trade deadline and the rest of the year. July 1st and the trade deadline, more mistakes were made those 2 days than the rest of the year combined, times 2, because of the pressure to improve your team, because of the 4 groups. Everyone's trying to add something, and the people who identified themselves as sellers are trying to get the best value they can. So it's hard, but it's fun too. And I say I wasn't a big deadline guy, but you still got to work the phones. You got to be on everything. But if major trade happens you don't know about, you're asleep at the switch. You got to at least know it's there. And you have a chance to say, no, I'm not going to do that. So we're not going to be able to make a deal every time you get. But if you don't know that player's in play and he gets moved, you're not doing your homework.
It's a great thing about Brad Treliving. He is connected to everything. Burke, we love you. Thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.